coming in person also, it gives you more of the option to interact and ask questions. So I have, all these different papers here, which are mostly things from the slide presentation, but I try not to get too caught up in the slides. They give us a topic to discuss, a thought to, think about, okay, there it is, and then move on. If everything is more based upon the slides, and that is where your attention goes, it gets kind of old. It's like, where's the next slide? Where's the next slide? Where's the next slide? And our attention gets bored. So I don't like my classes or my discussions to be lectures. I'm not here to lecture you. You folks have been around long enough that you know, health is an important part of your life. And I like to have more of a discussion. So each time a slide comes up, I'm going to give some of my input on it. And then, I can ask, hey, anybody got questions on this before we move ahead? But what would work better is you folks just, raise your hand and say, hey, can I add some, input to this, or, I have questions on this particular slide and whatever topic it is that we're covering. So my name is Jim Moltzen. Nice to meet all of you. Moltzen, my name is German. I've had the opportunity to go to Germany just 2 weeks ago with my wife and a Rick Steves tour to kind of see where our ancestry came from. So that's why I couldn't come last week. Last week or the week before, there was a little introductory thing. I was, traipsing across Europe, doing a tour. Very enlightening to see the health and viewpoints, perspectives of health in a different country. I found there that the people look much healthier than here. You see people in 70s and 80s on their bicycles with groceries in their baggage cart things on the bike, full suit, like a three-piece suit or whatever they were wearing, women wearing dress, and they're 70 or 80 years old, taking their groceries home. People smoking everywhere. Smoking is still very popular in Europe, and it's kind of crazy that we're sitting down outside. A lot of the restaurants are outside, and people are, smoking because it's outside and they can do it. Inside, I guess they do have the ban like here. But again, the people look seemingly healthier. Maybe they have a high, cancer rate, lung and heart disease, I don't know. But they look like they're in better shape. And they're eating food. Doesn't look that healthy, but I ate it too, and sausages and cheeses and stuff. After eating it, I didn't feel stuffed. Didn't have the side effect of a big meal here where, you eat it and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten so much. So anyway, I bring that up, just a little background on who I am. So Jim Moltzen, I'm 61 years old. I've been doing martial arts and fitness activities since I was 16 years old. Over the years, I had martial arts schools. We taught seminars, lessons, demonstrations, all types of different things. And then as I got older and started a family, I shifted more into, the holistic health and practicing martial arts and qigong and yoga for your health, mind and body, how to bring the two together, mind, body, and spirit, and get into that. So does anybody have any questions before we kind of get underway here? Yes?
You were saying about other countries, but your travels around this country, have you noticed three different parts of the country?
Yes.
Here, and I noticed a difference in health, and like you're saying, looking at people that look healthier, looking at the availability of fruits, vegetables, and whatever it's season.
Right.
Have you noticed that yourself coming around this country?
Yeah, so I have traveled quite a bit around the country, and that's why I'm starting to do more Europe now. It's like I see some other cultures and, landmarks and buildings and things. So I travel to the West Coast fairly often. I have friends in California. We used to have a lot of our seminars in California. The attitude in California, love it or hate it, people are a bit more health-oriented on the West Coast. California all the way up to Washington State. I hung out in Washington State quite often too. And the people will attend classes like this in a heartbeat. I'm doing a Tai Chi class, come on out. 20, 30 people show up. They love it. Yoga studios. My friend lives in northern San Diego, in Del Mar area, and there's probably 20 or 30 yoga studios that he can go to. Very trendy. People love the clothes and the yoga lifestyle. That's the West Coast. East Coast, I've spent some time in Boston and New York, And there's your smokers. You're walking around New York, downtown, people are smoking. They hold it to keep you away. Keeps distance.
Oh, interesting.
So,
I should light up to get
yeah. So the last couple times I was in New York, I kind of noticed that because Florida has been smoke-free for a while now, and I really don't see it other than outside of, hate to say it, healthcare facilities. Outside of hospitals and nursing homes, assisted living, you see all the workers outside at smoke break. It's like they're smokers. We go to restaurants, we go to the attractions. I don't see people smoking. So it's a little different. New York, there's also smoking. So people walk a lot in New York and in Boston, especially in the city. So they're more active in that way. They're walking a lot. Midwest people, I see them sitting a lot more and being indoors more because of the weather. Bad weather in New York and Boston too, but they still get around. Bad weather in Chicago, they stay inside for weeks at a time. So that's why I moved. I used to live in Chicago, and the lack of sunlight and the congestion really just bothered me. I'm spending so much time on the road to get to where I don't want to be, work or whatever the case may be, and the sun's not out helping me. So we come down to Florida, and it's like every day the sun comes out, like almost every day, So for some people, that's called SAD, seasonal attention deficit, or seasonal affective disorder, and bothers some people. And for me, it was very noticeable. So Midwest people, they're indoors a lot of the time, and then the sun comes out and they complain because it's like, I got to be at work. So now you get into the emotional aspect of their health being affected by depression. And then anxiety, like, I can't wait for the sun to come out. When are we coming? The weekend's coming up. So you got that anxiety, depression thing going on. That's what I found. So does that cover a bit? So there's probably a couple other places I've been to that I could comment on too, but that gets us bi-coastal. So any other questions before I kind of do my thing? So what I would like to start off with is a breathing exercise, because really all of this stuff that I'm talking about, health and fitness and wellness and stress and tension, it all comes back to our breathing. And it's the thing that we take for granted the most. It's like, I breathe all the time. Well, of course you do. But the quality of the breathing is what makes the difference. So there's this technique, it's called box breathing. You've heard of it. It's been around for a while. Actually, the Navy SEALs is what kind of brought it to attention in the United States and like the health care industry and that. It's like Navy SEALs do box breathing because they live such a stressful life. And if they do this breathing technique, it can help relax them while they're going into battle, or someone's injured, or their sniper is going to take a shot. So it's box breathing. And I even have a little handout that by the end of this, you folks can grab all the stuff that you want here. And this just gives you that idea. So it's a box, right? A box has 4 sides. 4 seconds is what you kind of base each leg of the box. So we can start off with, sitting in the chair. If you're like this, it's not going to help us as much. You can stand up if you want, but I'll show you how to do it sitting down. So we don't want to be crunched. We don't want our feet tucked under. There's a whole progression. And when you start to put your thought into your body to put your alignments together, right away it puts you in a different zone. It's like you're not thinking about the people walking by or the air conditioning in the background or the cookies on the table. Those things are all here and you're aware of it. But as soon as I start to say, okay, let's do this. Put your feet out so your knees are level with your hips and your toes are out beyond your knees as opposed to below your knees, right? Take your back and arch it. Feel the tension in your back being arched. Dip your chin and round your back. So you can feel the difference. There's contrast between being rounded and arched. Let's go for somewhere in between. Not too much arch, not too much slouch, right? Palms, turn your palms up. That's right away when you do that, you go from here, where you can have a little tension, grabbing onto your knees, your thighs, palms up, the tension goes away. You're not grabbing, unless you're squeezing your fists right here. So shrug your shoulders, feel that tension, and let your shoulders drop. So now you're kind of in a good alignment where you're not restricting the blood flow with your legs caught underneath or your back being slouched. So this all goes back to the box, right? So I'm gonna breathe in, just say like one leg, 1 4-second. So it's inhale. And then 4 seconds to exhale. So that just gets us, that's not even the box. That's just one side going up and then over a little bit, right? If you're following the whole square. So again, I breathe in, 4 seconds. And breathe out, 4 seconds. So you can relax your eyes. You don't want to be straining. Oh, I'm looking, what's your name tag say? Oh, I can see your name tag. No. Your eyes directly connect to the brain, the optic nerve and the nervous system. So if your eyes are relaxed, your whole nervous system starts to relax. If your eyes are slightly closed and you can just kind of tell the lights in the room, you now can go another level in and you can feel more of your body instead of your eyes processing what you're looking at. Your brain is processing what you're feeling. So let's try that a couple more times. Hopefully you're still breathing. Nobody's holding their breath, right? Inhale. Exhale. So let's add another leg. So we breathe in for 4, hold the breath for 4 seconds. Just don't do anything for 4 seconds. And then exhale for 4. Yes? You got a question?
Air traffic control. In, out.
Yep.
In, out.
In through your nose. Out through your nose is the best, but out through your mouth is okay. All through your mouth is the worst because, kind of getting away from the breathing part right now. Hopefully you're all relaxed. We can stop. You don't have to keep doing the breathing like we're talking about. Just relax however you would. So breathing through your nose, it's great. You get filtered air. The air is warmer going into the lungs. There's chemical reactions that start to happen. There's this molecule, nitric oxide, that makes your veins and arteries more open, dilate. So it's like, breathing through your nose is actually affecting chemically your nervous system. Other things about breathing through your nose. There's a olfactory nerve that you're bringing the oxygen past, and that's kind of stimulated, right? So you're more aware, but your body's also being relaxed from breathing through your nose. Breathe through your mouth. Now you got airflow going across your mouth. And if you do this enough, say you're doing it for 5 minutes, your mouth starts to dry out. So now you're distracted. Instead of me thinking about breathing deep and relaxed and 4 seconds, my mouth, where's the water? Give me water. So in through the nose, out through the mouth is okay, but your mouth starts to dry. All through your mouth becomes very shallow. The whole breathing mechanism changes, and instead of breathing through your nose where you're a bit more inclined to move your diaphragm, breathing through your mouth, you start to suck air, and then it becomes more and more shallow. And your mouth dries out. So it's like shallow breathing and your mouth is dry. This is no fun. I don't want to practice the breathing stuff, Jim. What else you got? No. So there's a method to it. Air traffic control. That was good. I like that. I'll use that. That's good. Okay. So eventually we work our way through the box, and it's inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, wait another 4, and then you breathe in again. So that gets us all the way around the box. And 4, again, 4 sides, 4 seconds, I need to take a breath, right? So when we get our breathing down to below 10 breaths per minute, the nervous system changes from the parasympathetic to the sympathetic. There's a switch, right? So we go from being on guard, like, who's that? Someone's going, you're constantly on guard. Your nervous system is kind of alert. We get to 10 breaths per minute or below, we're more in a relaxed and they call it rest and digest. Your digestive system kicks in. So it's like, even though I stand up and yell fire, there's no fire. So it's like, false alarm. So your reaction is still, you're kind of relaxed, right? But then you see the fire and the alarm goes off. Now you're going to get up into that sympathetic nervous system. Why is this an issue? So most of us operate at about 12 to 15 breaths per minute throughout the day. If I'm just doing this, talking and doing this stuff, probably about 12. The fire alarm goes off, I'm up to 15. real fire in the room or I see someone collapsed, I'm probably up to 20, 25 breaths per minute. And got to do something. So as soon as you start to practice any of the breathing exercises, even if I don't do like a count, but I just think about breathing slower and deeper, right away it gets you to about 10. And that's good. If you do the 4, the 4, the 4, and the 4, that gets us down to like 3.5, 3.7, I think, breaths per minute. So it's really good. And that's why you see people like the yogis and martial artists and that they're practicing the movement sometimes real slow. Tai Chi, you do it real slow because of the breathing. It slows down your nervous system. So that was our little intro. You get to know me a little bit. You know what I'm talking about. We're in the same room talking about managing our health through our breathing and our nervous system. So we're going to continue to move on. Does anybody have any questions? If I start to talk too fast, that's a good time to hold up your hand. Can you explain that again? Because it's easy to kind of get rolling here. Okay, so I got my little slide advancer somewhere. Where did we put it? Anybody see this thing? Here it is. So you all know this is a class on holistic health. That's why you came in, you signed up for it. Pillars. Those 5 little balls or bubbles there, they're the pillars of what, I don't like saying modern medicine, but Western medicine. You go to your doctor, there's a good chance they'll tell you these are the things you should be watching. Food and diet, exercise, how you manage stress, are you sleeping well, do you have good social interconnections, relationships. Most of the ancient cultures, India, China, they've known this for a long time. They just haven't been as organized with, okay, we're calling it this, this, and this, and it's 5 pillars. There's actually 3 pillars. That's mind, body, and spirit. Spirit sometimes can be explained as awareness, not necessarily, religious. It's just an awareness of you and what's going on. So then they go from 3 pillars to 5 pillars, and then there's 7, and I think up to 9, depending upon who's talking and giving you the explanation. So the extra pillars would be like financial. Like, are you financially well? Because that will affect all the other ones. And then there's, yes?
My experience, I think you were fairly generous.
Generous and general. I'll take both.
To doctors, to the extent that they cover those 5 things.
Yeah, I was being generous. That's called reading the room a little bit. So when I do come to these activities, I have this stuff organized, right? But then I also have in my mind, there's the plan B and C, depending upon who's in the room. If people come and there's some canes and walkers and someone's got one of those oxygen machines and stuff, okay. I just acknowledge it and my mind recalculates what we're going to talk about or what we're going to do. So all of you have been exposed to the American medical system. It's got the good and the bad. This is the bad. They don't get in any depth with this too much unless you ask and you get somebody who's a medical provider who's knowledgeable and says, oh yeah, I did actually take classes on stress and nutrition and things like that. So, good point. So the 5 pillars, like I said, goes on to 7 and 9. Financial is a pillar, and then stewardship is one too. Like, you want to be a good person, not just to your friends and your family, but to the earth. So that's another type of health that it all gets affected. So that brings me to this. So I got all my little gadgets and accessories here. So this, anybody know what this is? What it's called? Some people, as they get older, I'm 61, I'm guessing some of you might be 62 or 63, a little bit older, right? Is a toy that they often give their grandkids, or they play with their grandkids, and then they can pull on it, and the little child is like figuring it out. It's very tactile, pull and push. But it's called a tensegrity model. TENS, like T-E-N-S, and then G-R-I-T-Y, tensegrity, if you can spell it out. Don't know if I got all the letters in there. And it's actually like in physics and architecture and science, in that each connector will affect the other ones. So if you pull one, it's affecting the other ones. And this is kind of how our body works. You know, if you have an injury or ache in your foot, it's like, oh, I hurt my foot. I can't go to class today. I can't go to the gym today. My foot's bothering me. And now it's affecting your brain. You know, it's all connected. You know, it's like, oh, I'm feeling good today, but my little toe's bothering me, so I can't do what I would have done. So that's kind of oversimplification of it, but you get the idea. You know, your diet affects your brain. You eat certain foods, makes you more agitated. You don't eat, you're hungry. You're, oh, come on, I'm irritable because I haven't eaten. They call that hangry. Angry with an H. So this model is very representative of our body, very representative of these pillars all affecting one another. Biff. Anybody ever seen this guy before? Biff, best friend forever. It's the presentation of the energy meridians that Eastern cultures seem to understand quite a bit more so than we do here. In India, they have this too, in Indian culture with Ayurveda, different meridians in the body, and they call them nadi points. And then traditional Chinese medicine and Taoism, they seem to understand this quite a bit. This will come in, you know, more as we go throughout this here, but it's again the same idea that all of these meridians affect your physical being, and it can affect your mental well-being too. So we see something in the news, oh my gosh, pick anything, any day, and it's going to make you sick to your stomach or angry. You know, it's like the whole emotional spectrum. You can turn the channel, you know, turn on the Love Boat or something, you know, Big Brother, you know, whatever show. It's like, okay, now your mind goes to a different spot where it's not as agitated, perhaps. So the emotions, what your eye sees, that's why we closed our eyes a little bit when we're doing the breathing, what your eye sees affect your brain affects the chemistry affects your body. It's all connected. So that's this thing here, that's Biff, it's all connected. So again, questions, please, you know, just jump in and we'll keep the discussion going. So this was the part where I was supposed to tell you, you know, make sure your cell phones are silenced. So, you know, I was in Germany, or I was in Austria, Salzburg, like 2 weeks ago, and we had the opportunity to go see a concert. It's, you know, it's like the classical music capital of the world, and I didn't really, I kind of knew it, but I didn't realize it until I was standing there in Mozart's house, where Mozart was born and performed around town and so forth. So we go to this concert, 7 rows. The room was about this big. 7 rows. We were in the 7th row. We're in the back. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. But you know, you're playing the violin and you're playing the cello over there. That's how far we were. And in front of me, a mix of tourists, you know, from all parts of the world, German group of ladies. Their phone goes off during the concert. I thought that the people that were performing were just going to have a heart attack and stand up and like, you know, what are you doing? They acknowledged it, they looked, and the woman was fumbling, trying to turn the thing off, and then they just went about their business. And I was like, oh, that's how they're going to do that. They're not going to throw a fit, they're just going to go about their business. But that was so disturbing, because everybody was watching and, you know, listening, and then all of a sudden, and it's like the nervous system just shocked. So please silence your cell phones, right? I always have, whatever I'm talking about here, there's always going to be a connection, you know. There's going to be, oh, my website. Oh, yeah, a whole bunch of the stuff's on my website. So I don't just throw this stuff up there for nothing. Everything has a purpose. Oh, there we go. So this is a real cool sheet that I put it together. It kind of shows all these different types of alternative, you know, what we call alternative. Yeah, there's this here. Can you pass those out maybe?
Sure.
That would be wonderful. So many of these things, you know, you brought up, you know, American medicine a moment ago. Our nation is kind of embracing some of these things, and they call it alternative. It's almost like a backhanded compliment. Like, oh, yeah, you do that alternative stuff. You go to the traditional Chinese medicine doctor, and they put needles in you. Oh, how barbaric. They've been doing that for 3,000 years, plus or minus, depending upon whose history book you're reading. Alternative is because it's alternative to what we've known. And even in the United States, before like my parents came here and their parents migrated, so it's part of the Germany-Austria thing, you know, they came between World War I and World War II to get the heck out of Europe because it was so disrupted and broken. And when they came to the United States, they actually had a lot of remedies, home remedies that they used. And that was my grandparents. And I didn't meet them because I was so young and they passed away. But they brought to the U.S. with them, when we had a cold or sore throat, it was hot milk or warm milk with honey in it. And it's really the fluid, it didn't necessarily have to be milk. Milk isn't the best for us these days either, but the fluid, warm fluid is good for your digestion. Honey is good for your immune system. So they knew this. And then my parents kind of got away from it, and then they had Jägermeister. You know what Jägermeister, the liqueur is? You ever read the ingredients? It's all herbs and spices. It's cloves and cinnamon and pepper and all these different things, and then there's some alcohol in it. So we would get this like a teaspoon or so when I was very young, when I had a sore throat or a cough. And my parents didn't think of it as alcohol or booze, it was a remedy. So, the toothache, was a finger of whiskey. Put your finger in the whiskey bottle and then, put it on the tooth, and it helped with the toothache. So a lot of those things were kind of lost when allopathic medicine got involved, and there's a whole story with that, with John D. Rockefeller and petroleum products that are used in pharmaceuticals and that. So again, alternative, not so much. It's just ancient or forgotten. And I'm not here to poo-poo, allopathic medicine. There's things that it definitely helps with, especially trauma and injury. And, some things there's no options. The healthcare industry right now with Ozempic and Wegovy and that's a godsend for some people that have health issues that are related to obesity. But it's also a crutch, too, that they're starting to see people don't change their habits, they just change their medicine. So then what happens? Now they're starting to have bone issues, lack of bone density that's more coming from that. And then eyesight. You're finding some people are affected by eyesight from Ozempic, and then loss of muscle tone. So there's always going to be a good and a bad with it. On the way out, if I get hit by a car or a fire truck or something, please give me the morphine, give me, whatever I need to, get healed or helped. So let's keep going. If you have any questions on any of these things, I'm not an expert in each of these, but I'm well versed in all of them. So, I'm humble enough, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. I just have more information maybe than the next person. And if I've been doing it since I was 16, I got a lot of stuff in my head. But each and every one of these things has its place, and some of it's good, some of it's not as good or reliable or effective, if, whatever you want to look at. Like magnets. People are, oh my gosh, that's a fad, magnets. Well, at the very least, it's not going to hurt. People use the magnets on their wrists or on their knees. They got sore knees and stuff. And a lot of this stuff can kind of connect to the placebo effect. Yeah. So pick any one of these things and, you can call, BS on it and say, that doesn't work. And then you can find as many other people that would, say it does work for them. So, so I've studied a lot of this stuff, right? I actually have a degree now in holistic health because I had so much of this from over the years. Like, I got to get a degree so people actually know that there's some continuity with it. So the placebo effect, geez, if it works for you, who cares? The magnets, if it works for you and you feel like you get some relief from your knees, why not? Music therapy is on there somewhere, sound music therapy. Well, geez, we've been listening to, like classical music and Mozart. Oh my gosh, it's so relaxing and your nervous system feels calm. And then someone comes in like with the phone and it's so loud. That's sound, that's negative sound. So, rock and roll music, I love it. It's not good for the nervous system though. Led Zeppelin, they're going to perform again, I hear. Yeah. They're going to have like the final tour. They all have the final tour, I think I actually might want to go see, Led Zeppelin. But that's not good for the nervous system. So any of these things can be taken as good or bad depending upon your perspective. And a placebo effect, it's been working for a long time. Which one?
I hear a lot of people talk about Reiki.
Which one?
Reiki.
Reiki. Oh, so I do have an opinion on this. And this is why we might not get far. Because again, this is a discussion. It's not, I got to get all the stuff in, so I said I got it all out there. It's discussions. So
I do it.
You do Reiki?
I do it, and I swear by it.
Okay.
I swear by it. Do I have 60 seconds for a quick story?
Sure, yeah. The floor is yours.
Cardiologist, you're getting 120,000 beats. It really should be about 100.
Okay.
I forgot what he wanted to do in terms of surgery and getting it down and then time out. I came across Reiki. Somebody was offering a Reiki class. I went and I started doing it. And a couple of months later, it was 100,000, not 120. Now, I don't know if it's placebo effect, whatever, or
Yeah.
something else intervened, but the timing was such. I did it, and I saw a measurable change.
That's good. I can't dispute it. So I have good and bad. I don't even want to say good and bad. It's just, maybe positive or negative from whatever we're talking about, right? So with Reiki, I took some courses on Reiki too. I'm actually certified in Reiki. What I found was, for the individual, if you're practicing like the self-Reiki, that's wonderful because that's like self-awareness. That's Qigong in some ways. You're relaxing and you're breathing and you're trying to get the energy flowing. So that's very much a Qigong type exercise. Reiki, I think the roots are more from Japan. So, same culture, just a little different culture, same area. The issue I have with Reiki is the extending it to other people and the remote. We talk about doing remote Reiki. It's like, well, I'm going to think about you and you're in California and I'm going to send my Reiki energy your way because you're sick and you might feel better. So if you're going to do that, I would just call that prayer. And then you're getting into the spiritual aspect of holistic health. And it's like, we do this all the time. I pray for you. My mom's up in Chicago. She's 97 years old. She prays for me. It's like, I should pray for you. But either way, right? It's good. So that type of energy, I'm relying upon something greater than us. And we don't know what that is, right? Reiki, it's a little bit more like, I'm sending you my energy. It's like, almost like the opinion, like I know my energy, when we don't.
I talk to people about it. Don't bother unless you really believe that it will help you, which connects, I think, to the placebo.
Yeah.
Maybe in and of itself isn't effective, but if you do it like the magnet you mentioned,
Right.
if it's working for you,
Yeah, so that's where I would not discount it at all. If people are doing it, what's it hurting? Do it. You get it. So here's another kind of parallel with that. Anybody ever go for massages? You do massage? I do it on a regular basis. Go to the massage therapist at Hand and Stone. My wife and me go. It's great. You get that release of tension. So those individuals, physical therapists, people that do hands-on work, oftentimes they're exhausted at the end of doing the session because of the physical amount of effort, right? But oftentimes they feel exhausted mentally too. So say they're working on someone who's just got a lot of stress and tension, like maybe a firefighter or maybe a soldier, someone that's returned from being in active duty that's seen some crazy stuff, and they're working on that person. That energy, if you're following with Reiki, can come back. So now I'm absorbing their energy. I'm making them feel good by doing the massage and that, but I'm talking to them, I'm hearing their issues, now I'm absorbing that in there. So now I take that baggage with me. So if you believe what's happening with energy, there's transfer of energy. Energy never is destroyed, right? That's physics and chemistry, energy just turns into the next thing. You burn this down, you have ashes, and ashes, it's energy, it never goes away. So the energy, if it's negative, it's going somewhere. If it's positive, it's going somewhere too. So anyway, Reiki, again, if you're getting benefits from it, go for it and do it. But the remote part of it is what I think's a little, if you're going to do that, I might as well just be praying, because most people believe there's something, beyond this, whatever that may be. All right? So prayer and Reiki.
Well, I know there's people who practice Reiki. I have a friend who practices it, which is why I haven't tried it. But I also noticed with her, she is a delight to be around. Like, she doesn't have to practice it. You could be with her.
Mm-hmm.
And her energy, she makes you feel good.
Yeah.
It's just her.
That could also be aura, charisma, positive energy. There's a lot to be said. That's a whole nother topic. We're only on the second slide, folks. So there's this concept, exactly what you're talking about, and it's called, energy vampires or energy suns. So say I'm not already here. I'm not already, 10 minutes, 20 minutes into this, and I just walked in, and I'm bumping into the door, and I'm loud, and I'm like, where's the food at? All of a sudden, everybody's energy is going to go down a notch because I stole it. I'm a vampire. I'm taking it in. And it's like, who the heck's this guy? Is he our speaker? Oh my gosh. It's like already your energy is being drained because of one person and their presentation or lack thereof. And then somebody else walks in. Just for discussion. Say Jesus Christ walked in the door, or somebody that looked like Jesus Christ. The beard, the robe. For a moment, your energy level might shift. If you're Christian, it would be like, oh my gosh, that guy looks like Christ. So that would be an energy sun, regardless if it was Christ or somebody else that just has some charisma or, bringing that kind of energy to the room. I would like to think I bring more positive energy to a room than negative energy, but that's yet to be determined, right? So, and that's the third aspect of mind, body, and spirit. The spirit part, awareness. Knowing yourself, knowing the room, that's awareness, so that's that level. So we can continue, any other questions or comments on any of these things here? We did a little meditation, the breathing thing. It was a breathing exercise, right? So we can call that meditation. It could be yoga or Tai Chi even, as far as managing your breath. It could be guided imagery, because I was walking you through this, the square and giving you things to think about. Could be psychological therapy. So some of these things overlap quite a bit. And then, just basically deep breathing, it's like, well, that's what it was, deep breathing. So it depends on how you want to categorize or label things, because sometimes people shy away from certain things, like, oh, you say Reiki? I don't want to have anything to do with that. Or if I say we're doing deep breathing, we're going to do box breathing. And then later on I say, well, that's meditation. And then you're like, meditation, that's spiritual and weird stuff. No, it's however you want to label it.
What's your definition of meditation?
Focused thought. And sometimes lack of focused thought, because you can do it both ways. So we're doing this here, and we're focusing on what we're doing. So, okay, my attention's there. Like I said, you're not thinking about someone coming in or the food or fire engine in the distance. Your focused thought is you, and maybe you're breathing. But then another type of meditation will be where you kind of get to that point where you're just sitting there and you're breathing deep. Then you try to not think about anything. There's no focus. And all those things go in one ear and out the other. The air conditioner thing again, I can hear maybe the lights humming, but I don't focus on it. I'm aware of it, so it goes in one ear and out the other. So meditation could be focused thought, could also be lack of focused thought. Cooking can be meditative. You're focusing on what you're doing. I don't want to burn the house down. I want this to go good. I want the right recipe, the right time. It's focus. Gardening can be meditation. Put your mind where you're at. So that's another definition, meditation, putting your mind where you're at. So I'm in the room with you folks right now. Here, this is it. This is what we're talking about. Not thinking about my dog at home. She'll be fine. So meditation, a lot of different versions of it. So let's move on. Prolonged sitting is the new smoking. You're going to hear about this. If you haven't already, they're starting to do that. We demonize smoking for, my whole life. Ever since I was born, I knew smoking wasn't good. As soon as I could see my dad smoking and coughing and, in the news they had the thing, smoking's bad and all that. So I've known this for a long time. You folks probably too. But now they're starting to connect this. Finally, it's like people have been sitting. Why are so many Americans in bad shape? They're sitting. With the convenience of cars, the convenience of the computer, we're sitting more than we ever have. My father-in-law, he's 93. My mom, 97. My mom, 97, hasn't been too mobile, probably in the last 10 years or so. It's hard. Her body's starting to, shut down. My father-in-law, 93, looks like he's in worse shape. He's mobile. He's a bit overweight. He hobbles around. He is mobile. He gardens still. He's got a big garden in the backyard. He drives to different activities a couple days of the week to play chess or euchre, plays euchre. They give him a meal. He's active. He's mobile. He's not just sitting. So we got to do it. We got to get up, got to get moving. So you're going to hear about this much, much more. It's not going to go away. Risk of obesity or diabetes increases for every 2 hours of sitting. So basic, some of these things are going to have a lot of text, and I'll just kind of summarize it. Try to get up every 2 hours. If you're watching television, that's 2 TV shows or a movie. Try to get up. Don't just click on the next show. Or if you're sitting at the table reading the newspaper, I enjoy reading the newspaper still. Get up, get moving. But that's your reminder. Every 2 hours, try to get up.
What's really sad is that the generation that we're kind of going through COVID, kids, young people, this is kind of their new modality. I think all of us would call it active children, right? But this really scares me for the future of a lot of the kids who I work with. Anyway, I'm a counseling psychologist, and I have a lot of clients with parents of children who are in this mode of not doing anything but being on their phones and tablets, which also means they're just sitting, right? I really worry about that. So we need to teach this to them so they understand the importance of moving. And
I've tried to get into some of the schools and high schools to have these talks, and it's just, if I don't have a name or a contact, it goes nowhere, and it's the stuff they need. So I just had this conversation with one of my students who's a friend of mine too, and everything really boils down to, the pain and suffering. And you'll hear about this like Buddhism. What's the goal of Buddhism is to relieve pain and suffering. And people will kind of go, yeah, okay, move on with your Buddhism and your meditation and your, little religious stuff and, give me some prescription medicine to be on my way. But really, on that level, everything comes down to pain and suffering. And I've known this since I was a kid. That's why I got into martial arts, because I didn't want to physically be suffering. I saw my dad smoking, drinking, poor diet, German diet, by the way, for a while, but in America. And then it's like, no, I don't want to do that. So I started taking care of my health. And then the suffering part, we're all going to experience this at some point as we get older. Pain, physical pain, suffering, mental suffering from life, and maybe loneliness. As you get older, you have less people around you. So we're all going there. That's the road. Hate to say it, but I knew it when I was 16 years old. And that's why I'm here today at 61 to keep doing this, trying to get the word out that we're eventually all going to be in that same spot. So these kids, I don't know what else to do with it. My kids actually kind of survived it a bit because they were into the rowing team. Both my kids were on the rowing team. My daughter was in band. Marching band in Florida is brutal, very physically demanding. So they kind of continued with physical activity to offset the phone use. So they still use the phone, but they kind of offset it. So what were you going to say?
Just read an article yesterday, new phrase, solo aging. People living alone.
Oh.
Aging, and the effects of being alone.
Yeah. So there's a slide that I don't know if we'll get to it, it's so much further in here, but there's this Japanese term called ikigai. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. The blue zones. Anybody ever hear of the blue zones? So the author of the blue zones, his name is something Buechner. Buechner? Yeah. You know who I'm talking about, right? So he went to these different places and they call it the blue zones. People were seemingly healthier in those areas. Italy, in areas with steps and hills and stuff, people were healthier because they were having to walk upstairs. Here we get rid of the stairs and when you get older. I don't want to be on any stairs, give me the elevator. There they embrace having stairs because it keeps them healthier. So ikigai was from Japan, and it was the term for having meaning and purpose. Probably more defined than that, but meaning and purpose. And it's like, well, again, here you're going into spiritual stuff. It's like, no, you gotta have something that gets you out of bed every day. When I had kids, I had to get up and take them to school. And then it was go to their activities. And then they went on to college. So, go see them at college. So, there's meaning and purpose in having a family. I find meaning and purpose in doing this. So, even if people don't show up, I'm still going to do it, because I feel there's some value in doing it. So with the kids, kind of bring this all back, they're being set up not to have any meaning and purpose right now. Take the phone away, oh my gosh, that's me, that's my identity right there. They identify as a phone. I identify as a human, and a teacher, and an educator, and a writer, and a martial artist, and a father, and a parent. You know, it's like, I don't identify with the phone. If I lose it, I'm going to be screwed for a while, but it's a phone, you know? So poor fitness can be as bad for your health as tobacco smoking. So we've gotten a lot of people to stop smoking, but we haven't gotten them to stop sitting. So, and here again is our little connection to the tensegrity model. So the more you sit, you might be isolated more. You know, like you're at home all the time. You're home, you're just sitting around at home, so you're not around other people. So that's affecting your social interactions. This one. If you want to hand those out, that'd be wonderful. You're my helper today. Thank you. So the more people are isolated, they stay indoors. Look what happened during COVID. Again, whatever your opinions, plus or minus, good or bad, people were more inclined to be stuck inside. In my neighborhood, I was actually seeing people walking that I had never seen before. You know, our subdivision, it's like here, up in Wekiva, just people and apartments and condos and houses and that. All of a sudden, there's all these people that I had never met before, and they're all out walking. Now, granted, they were keeping their distance, but they were out walking. So would that change after COVID wasn't a threat? People aren't walking as much in my neighborhood now. Goes back. So less activity, you're not outside. You know, I can exercise inside. I exercise in my garage, in my patio, in my living room. I adjust depending upon the weather and who's home. And, it's like, this is me. I'm going to do it every day. I do something. If I miss a day, I don't feel guilty because I know almost every day I do that breathing exercise or I do Tai Chi or I teach classes, so I don't feel guilty. Staying indoors probably makes you less active. Less active, lowered immune system. If you're lower immune system, you're sick more, you find yourself sitting more or lying more. So it's all connected. So this, again, is kind of the whole thing with holistic health. If you ask for like a definition, like with meditation, like what's the definition of holistic health? I don't know if I got one definition of it because it's all, everything, It's like, yes, holistic health is about bringing your mind, body, and spirit together. But there's so many different aspects that are all connected with that. So let's keep going. This is the small print stuff, the details, the statistics. You can, grab the sheet on the way out. It's there too. But actually, I don't have that one.
Nope.
But you can look this stuff up. It's not hard to find. It's statistics, sitting's not good. But you got to do it. If sitting wasn't so good for us, in some ways you got to relieve yourself, relax and sit, talk and enjoy it. You got to sit. Otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to stand in. There's this thing in martial arts called horse stance, like you're sitting on a horse. Are we going to sit or stand in horse stance for the duration of this? We're going to stay here, and then I'm going to talk and give you that, but we're going to get exercise at the same time. No, we exercise in short bursts, but we sit in big, big chunks. So that's our 5 pillars from earlier. Here's our triangle. Cultures in general love symbols. Eastern cultures, symbolism all over the place. Christianity, the Trinity, the culture loves symbols. So the difference between a sign, a sign is like, where's the door, where's the exit? A symbol provokes thought. A symbol has meaning behind it that can be interpreted many different ways. So this is what I started off talking about. The physical aspects affect your mental aspects affect your spiritual or your awareness, and they're all connected. And usually you can get by with 2 of them. Like you can live kind of healthy and happy with 2 of them, but that third one, it's always the variable. It's like, oh, that's the one that's going to do you under. If you're in great shape, yay, I'm really sharp in that, but I have no connection to meaning and purpose. What's the goal here? Why am I around? If you have all the spiritual, you go to church every week, you pray for everybody, you feel great about your spirituality, and your mind is really sharp, but your body is ailing you, how long do you get to enjoy that? So again, same stuff, all connected. And this just takes it to another level. Your mind, people, we say mind, body, and spirit. Well, what's your mind? You have your knowledge, your intelligence. Knowledge is like the book stuff. It's like all this stuff. I can remember a certain amount of the stuff in my head. Well, intelligence is what you do with it. So there's some really smart people, knowledge-wise, college professors, doctors and that, really smart people. Intelligence, how do you apply it? So that's another way of looking at, that mind aspect. And then your cognitive processes. It's like, how well do you actually use it? It's like, I'm so smart, I know everything about a car, but I don't know when to slow down and not get into an accident. Disconnect. So the comment here is, how deep is your root? So there's this concept that's kind of mulled over a lot in this, holistic health atmospheres. That a tree, you got the roots. Without the roots, you don't have any trunk to grow. And without the trunk, you don't have any support for the leaves and the branches. So the leaves and the branches are actually the least important. They come and go, they get knocked down, storms and so forth. But the root that's the main part. So what is the root of your knowledge? You just want to learn stuff out of books and recite things and know all the Psalms out of the Bible, or be able to do something with it. Difference between book knowledge and, life knowledge. Spiritual awareness, that's your beliefs, your morals and values, your consciousness, how you think, being aware of you folks being in the room here, connections, all that social interactions and that. So this is why whenever I say spiritual, I always kind of have to put more information out there, because some people right away just go towards religion and say, we're talking mind, body, and spirit. And they're like, I'm out of here. We're talking about religion. And it's not. Religion is part of that. The other things, those are, important too. Physical health. That's really interesting because you get people who do one particular type of activity and they think that's their health. So I go to the gym. I go to the gym a couple days a week because it's good for me, the cardio aspect and the bone health. I can do it with martial arts. I can do it with Tai Chi. It's a longer route to get there. Or if I go to the gym, I can do a Stairmaster and treadmill for a half hour and condense that down. Problem I see, a lot of people can't touch their toes at the gym. They just can't. Or they can't balance on one leg. This is, some of your doctors might balance on one leg. Let's see if you can do that. I know for a fact there's some people that look like they're really buff, Arnold Schwarzenegger looking guys. They can't touch their toes. They can't stand on one leg. They can't breathe deep. And they think they're in great health. And people look at them like, oh my gosh, that guy's in such great health. But really they're not. So what I've found is if you spend time at the gym, doing that type of activity, that's great. Move your muscles, move your bones, engage your breathing, engage your thought. So you're hitting some of the bells and whistles, or the boxes, right? But what you're missing is regulation of your nervous system. And that's the breathing part and the stress part, right? So if you don't move your torso, your core, a lot of people move their core to make it stronger, like, sit-ups and weight training to, got to make the core strong. But if you're not moving the core, twisting the core, bending the core, the organs don't get this massage and squishing movement. So they're muscle tissue. It's like, well, I exercise my bicep and my pecs and my quads, but I don't exercise my spleen, my liver. I exercise my heart because that kind of beats more when I do the physical exercise. But that squishing part is actually really important. So the health aspect here, we got, homeostasis. That's just your body's ability to be normal, not, bad health, working the way it's supposed to. Energy level. Anybody take a nap yet today? One of my friends just told me he knows one of his relatives takes a 9 a.m. nap. He gets up like at 7, and then he takes a 9 a.m. nap because he's lacking energy. So he's, taking an early nap. Okay. Growth, as we get older, growth slows down. Takes longer for you to heal, right? Sleep. Sleep is such a big part of our health. So again, I'm at the gym, I look great, I can lift weights and, people admire me because my muscles look toned, but I can't make it through the night without getting up 10 times. And it's not just to use the restroom, it's, you're startled and you're just alert and geez, I'm just laying there in bed. So that's a really big issue with people that I think it's gone way too long with people not acknowledging that sleep is a predominant factor in your health. You know, when I was younger, we looked at it like, hey, you can stay up all night, you know, work extra hours, you know, pull an all-nighter or whatever. And it's like you're like, oh, wow, this guy's kind of cool, you know? And now I look back and it's like we were kind of stupid. You know, the sleep aspect that really can affect everything, immune system. So metabolism, immune response, development, and all different aspects of health. Any questions? Keep going. Why do bones become weaker? So again, with our group here, this is something that's probably been more in the news and your focus in the last couple of years is bone density and bone strength. Statistics are not good. When people fall, they break things. When they break things, they end up in the hospital. Sometimes in the hospital, they don't leave the hospital because either they get sick from something else, or that condition with the fractured hip ends up turning into something else. I have an uncle who passed away last year because of this exact issue. He ended up getting pneumonia because he was in the hospital with a broken hip. Passed away. So he's about 86 years old. You know, just this is what's happening. So inquiring minds want to know, why do bones become weaker? All kinds of reasons, like we already talked about. Sitting too much, poor diet, hormonal changes, our chemistry changes as we get older. Other health issues affect, you know, our bones. Aging, it's just part of the process. Genetics from our parents, they had weak bones, you're gonna have a tendency to have weaker bones. Risky choices. If you guys are rock climbing, mountain climbing, skateboarding, I don't know, what else? Skydiving. Skydiving, you'll be fine. That won't hurt your bones. Unless the parachute doesn't open, then all your bones get hurt, right?
I have a question about the parents. My parents were much older. They're like could be in their hundreds now. So their nutrition was not, you know, my mother, as time went on, you know, with the kids and doctors and nutrition, that we as a younger generation from that group, take vitamins, you know, try and, you know, do these things. So my mother had bone density issues and other health issues. But what of that was like learned, and what is like the next generation's coming that you learn more? So it's not really genetic; it was learned.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's the environment versus nurture versus nature.
Like, I try and do better through, you know, this kind of education, and knowing what my mother had with her bones, her body, and what my father had with his body. They were like 2 generations behind me. I came along very late in life. So it's very different. Like, for me to put it together genetically, was it because the way they lived, and they tried to do better for me as a child to have better nutrition and to learn better nutrition? Like, how much is actually genetic and how much is actually
I think it's some combination of both.
the current lifestyle?
Because, say my parents were very lean for a long time. They were lean, okay? And then me, I'm lean, but then I'm starting to eat more because I can afford it. You know, my parents weren't doing as well when they first, you know, starting a family and so forth. So it's like our culture has changed. You know, I'm making more money. I can eat out more. I can have more food in the house. I'm eating all the time. So now I'm having a tendency, I'm going to be overweight. So now my kids, they're in the same house. So is it from my genes, or is it because they're in the same atmosphere where I'm having food available all day long for them to eat too? So then it comes a point, then they grow up and they have kids. Now it's kind of in the genetics, maybe 2 generations, plus they're in the environment where they have it available. So I don't know what the exact, you know, formula is. It's not good though. So what's happening, there was some report a couple of years ago now that there's recruits that are going into the military, into the service, and they're getting rejected. And they're like 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're not passing the physical exam to get into the service. And then some of them that are getting into service are having hip fractures in their early 20s that are making them now ineligible. They can't serve. You got a hip fracture, you're 23 years old or 21 years old, so we don't want you. Hip fractures from lack of bone density, 20s. So that's what's happening now. Diabetes are coming into play. Middle school kids, It's not going to get better by the time they're 21 or 23 going into the service. So, this is kind of where things are at. So, not to be Debbie Downer, but this is the discussion. So this is what we're talking about. So let's keep going. Most of you, I think, know what this is. If you've been to the doctor in the last, so many months or years, they're probably talking to you about your bone strength and making sure you're healthy. Just getting up out of that chair every couple hours has a lot to do with making your bones stronger. That one ended up kind of small. This is all just bone density stuff, and your back starts to get weaker, the bones get weaker, and your muscles are getting weaker, so you find yourself, slouching more. Some of these slides are wonky. That's why they're not so big. If I copied them whatever size, they're not blowing up big. But this is just all so small. But this is showing predominantly where you have bone fractures as you get older. It's your hips, to some extent, your femur, and then the wrists. And oftentimes it's a wrist because you're falling. The wrist itself isn't, okay, there's lack of bone density, but why is it going to fracture? It's because you're falling. You're breaking your fall. Your hip, you're breaking your fall with your hip. So that's kind of where that goes. So what this is, most of you probably know how to cook, right? It's not how to cook. Come on, guys, you know how to cook, right? I was taught how to cook when I was a kid. My parents were working. So if you have whatever ingredients, that's your recipe. And just like we were talking about a second ago with, the genetics from your parents or the lifestyle from your parents, it's a recipe in whatever proportions. So if you don't have the right stuff, too much egg, too much flour, not enough, you're going to get whatever that recipe is. So, our whole life has been basically a recipe. And now it's coming to be done in the oven. And it's like, well, did I make a good recipe? Did I make a good cake? Or did I make a crappy cake? I guess I got a few things in my head, It's got to come out somewhere. So.
After you get the cookie out of the oven and you messed it up, it's done baking, then what?
Well, then you reassess, right? You go back and you look like, what did I miss? So you do it again, right? But with life, you don't get that opportunity to have a big do-over. Depending upon wherever you find out you messed up the recipe, that's like your starting point now. So, like my son doesn't like to eat fruit. My dad didn't like to eat fruit. Just not a fruit kind of guy, or guys. My son, he'll eat vegetables, loves vegetables. So, you get a lot of vitamins through the whole spectrum with that. But there's some, vitamin C's and fruits, well, I got to eat more broccoli or, whatever. But he just does not like that. So I keep trying to tell him, there will come a point where you might want to eat a little bit more fruit, or else your recipe might be a little bit off. And I'm not perfect either, I'm missing stuff. I go to get blood tests so I can find out if I'm missing whatever. But that recipe isn't just the food you put in your body, it's your lifestyle, what you do, and then it's the thoughts you put in your head. Because thoughts are diet too. If you watch Fox News all day long, if you watch CNN all day long, okay, there's your extremes. Probably going to have a recipe in here that's going to affect here. That's going to affect. Okay, so there's this other concept, head, stomach, feet, the progression. So it comes in your head, and then you digest it, and then you put it into play with your feet. So it's the thoughts you think. Digestion isn't just the physical digestion, it's how you process thoughts, like, oh, I just saw something evil, I'm not gonna, I don't wanna go there. So then that affects your mobility. So I bring some of these things back to my trip just a couple weeks ago because it's fresh. Dachau, a concentration camp, was near Munich, and that was a trip if you wanted to go on your own and do it. And I said to my wife, I don't want to do it. I know enough about it, I've read enough about it, we're here, there's good things, there's bad things. I don't want that to be in my diet when I go back home. Of all the things I remember, we had strudel, we had schnitzel, we saw churches that had this over-the-top Baroque architecture that almost was like, gaudy. Okay, I remember those things. I don't want that other image. I got enough of that. So.
I just had that experience with Alcatraz. We just got back from Alcatraz.
I've been there.
And my husband wanted to see Alcatraz. Before we were getting ready to plan on our return, I said, can we just take a pass on Alcatraz? To me, that is not what I'm looking for in the Bay Area. There's yoga, there's all this, but it's not what I'm looking for. And he said, oh yeah, we'll take a
Yeah.
But seeing that, you know, and like even with news media and all this stuff going on, you know, you try and watch as little as possible. I really didn't want to pay extra
Yeah.
to go see this deep, dark, dreary, moldy thing.
You gotta be careful what you put in your ears and your eyes. So.
I didn't need to, like you said, energy to feel
Yeah.
it, and we did the same thing. I said, could we really take a pass on Alcatraz? And we did.
I did get one positive thing from that.
From Alcatraz?
Yeah.
Okay.
They talked about how the diet was a lot of lobster because it was so prevalent that they could, you know, fish the lobster out of the ocean there, and that the prisoners actually got so tired of it they had a revolt, and they were like throwing the lobster, like, we don't want this anymore. So that was something that was kind of like a little more light in comparison to what was going on there. So that's something I remember. Lobster, they didn't like lobster. They got tired of it. It was so common that they got tired of it. So I have lobster, you know, once a year maybe, and it's like, it's cool. So that's a very good, I'm glad you picked up on this. It's a good analogy, you know. You're baking a cake and it's called you. You have a new part-time job or full-time job when you retire. It's called you know, however you want to look at it. So there's hormonal changes from age and that. This all kind of goes back to the bone stuff. Women start to experience it sooner and more so, just because of biology. You know, you didn't do anything wrong. You know, it's like just the way it is. But then there's also this idea. I should have had this one. There is this one. Where's my helper? Can you pass that one out? This one right here. It just gives you a graph of how things start to, I don't like using the word decline, but that's really what it is. It's decline. So as we all get older, you know, we're past the point of the graph going skyrocketing up, like when we were in puberty and, you know, young age, when we're active in that. So then we're kind of leveled off, you know, the next stage might have been 10, 20, 30 years ago for some of you, and then there's decline. So it's like you're never going to get back to that upward trajectory. It's you know, our body biologically, it just isn't going to do that. But you can lessen the decline. So instead of the graph going down so drastically, we're trying to keep it, you know, going out farther if you can. So again, some of these concepts probably not totally new to you. You know, you got to keep moving, be active. Our sedentary lifestyle. Ooh. So you folks know about this artificial intelligence. You know, it's a debate every day. It's in the news every day, numerous times every day. It helps you draw little pictures like this, though. So if you put in the right information, it can produce some pretty cool stuff as far as like what your message is that you're trying to achieve. But sometimes it takes 10 times to get to that point. So my idea with this was that our body, at some point, was like this fine, perfect mechanical machine, a vehicle. You know, the tires were awesome. You know, the radio was cool, the color was great. But then we decided that it was so perfect that we don't take it out of the garage. So now it's in the garage and the rubber starts to get brittle. All the hoses that are, you know, rubber or brittle and that. So then you finally take it out, like, oh my gosh, let's go take it out on the road. And it can't go anywhere because it didn't get maintained. So that's kind of the image that was. It's like, use your car, you know, get that thing out. Even if it's a, you know, a Chevy, it doesn't have to be a fancy Maserati.